Welcome to the Jordan. I'm so excited to be with you guys tonight. Tonight is the kickoff of our Jordan Summer series and our concert series. So after this, there's more to come. It's not just the Jordan tonight. Yeah, so we have a little bit of a concert series tonight. So I'm so excited to be here on night one of that. If you guys don't know me, my name is Clinton Norris, and I've been a part of I've been a part of the Jordan for a little bit of time now, and if you had the pleasure of being here last year, I spoke a little bit, or the worship night. I was up here for about 10 minutes, right? Had a yellow shirt on, beanie, I don't know if you remember that. So I'm here to talk to you guys a little bit tonight. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I grew up in Texas. That's where I came from. So I grew up in Texas. If you look at Texas, big state, and you pushed your finger right in the middle of where Texas is, that's where I grew up. There's nothing around it, just your finger. The nearest big city is about 3 hours away. So there's like a train in our town and 2 Walmarts, right? And every Texas town, I think, has 2 Walmarts. It's like some sort of law there in Texas. So I grew up in Texas. I grew up right in the Bible Belt. Our city, the name of the city is called Abilene, Texas. And the only way that if you Googled Abilene, Texas, what would come up is it's in the Guinness Book of World Records for the most churches per capita. So we had a church on every freaking corner. The church I went to, Southside Baptist Church. Holler. I thought someone was going to say, hey. But Southside Baptist Church, the church that I grew up in, there was like a church right across the street. And then right on the other corner, there was another church, right? So it was a really weird city to grow up in. Everybody went to church. It was a cool thing to go to church. If you didn't go to church, you weren't cool. It's like the weirdest like flip-flop that you would think of and what most people experience through their lives. So church was like a cool thing to do, and there's some dangers that come along with that. I think people put religion over a relationship when it's that prevalent, and that's exactly what happened. There's a lot of people that are really good at doing church and really bad at practicing it in their private lives. So there was this weird dichotomy that you would see, like Tracy's getting trashed, and it's like, hey, good morning, God bless you, Sunday morning, you know what I mean? You're like, you were trashed last night, but you look great today, coffee, you know what I mean? And so it was this weird like thing that you would see, you know, in that town. And so I am grateful for growing up there. My parents they've been married for, I'm trying to think how old I am, plus 2 years. So they have been married for 45 years. That tells you my age too, so it's 2 years younger. So 45 years they have been married. They are absolutely in love with each other. I have a sister. We're the fruits of their love. And I'm grateful for growing up there in that town because I did learn this from the beginning. It's like I've never not known God. I mean, it was just a part of what we did. It was a part of what we did every day. It's part of our Wednesday nights when I went to church. It was Sunday mornings, and then we went back Sunday night for church as well. So growing up there, I was really grateful for those kind of things, but then I saw a lot of darkness that tends to happen in the church. And it made me realize from a young age that everybody is human. The person standing up on stage, they're human. The person that's leading worship, they're human. They have a sinful nature to them as well. So I learned that very early on, which some might think that's a scary thing, but I was grateful to learn that at an early age. As I grew up, I felt like being in Texas, it just didn't fit my personality. Everybody just did what their dad did. So if their dad was a construction worker, they're like, I'm going to follow what my dad did. And then they become a construction worker. I come from a long line of roofers. And I made that decision a long time ago that I did not want to be a roofer. You know, like my dad would take these big shingles and put them on his shoulders, and he would walk up a ladder to the top of a roof. And I'm like, man, I just don't feel like I'm built for that. And so I turned my back on the roofing industry a long time ago, and I decided I wanted to do something different. I love when there's like this like this pushback, or there's something's happening that you're like, that's kind of an odd duck in that room, and I'm attracted to that piece. So like, being in Texas and being in this little tiny town, I'm like the only person that had tattoos. I was one of the only people that like skated when I was there. You know, I had tattoos, and me and like Frank, that was like the weird guy that went to bars every night. Me and him had a tattoo. He was like, let me tell you about the war. Me and him are the only people that had tattoos in that town. So I felt like I was an odd duck. And I kind of liked that. I loved like the stares of like, oh. And I was like, yeah, what? You know what I mean? I liked that for some reason. I don't know why. I would love to tell you a beautiful story why I loved it, but I don't know. I just did. And so I thought I wanted to be that person that left Abilene, Texas and did something different. while I was there, I started playing music. My dad taught me how to play guitar, actually, so he played guitar. He taught me a few things like chords and stuff like that, and so I started playing music. And in high school, as you do, you go through breakups, and you find this like love, and then they break your heart, and then you find this other love, and then they break your heart. You know what I mean? Well, that was my, is that not everybody else's story? That's my story. That was my story. And so I felt like there was something that I wanted to kind of help me through that. Your friends can only be there so many times to be like, I'm so sad and I miss her, you know? And then it gets to be like, dude, I don't really care anymore. This has been like, 3 months now, you know? And so what helped me through all that stuff was playing music. I started to write songs and like write things down that I felt, and she sucks, and whatever those things were that I was going through in those moments, those really like thoughtful things and creativity. She sucks. And started writing those things down and writing songs. And I joined a little small pop punk band in the early 2000s, right? And we're like hopping around on stage, like, you know, and playing shows in this really small town where there's 2 Walmarts and a train. Like, there's 10 people there. You know, the front row right here was there, and they're like our best fans and stuff. We're like, we love all 10 of you guys. And those were some of the funnest times. We were playing shows, and we started to get like a little bit of notoriety in that town because we were the only band that played. And it was easy to gain a crowd there. And as we started doing that, we started to play in other cities. So there are other cities that had like a little local music scene, and they invited us to go there. And then we would start traveling around Texas, and it got to be really fun. And I was like, you know what? I could do this for the rest of my freaking life. I was in a van with 5 of my like closest friends, and we were just driving around to other cities and getting out and playing shows. It was awesome. And I felt like I wanted to do that for a really long time. And the bigger we got, the more I got solidified into, this is kind of like who I am. I'm like the singer of this band. I'm playing bass, and we're drawing all of these people into these shows, and it became part of like my identity, and I loved it. And through that process, we met a lot of other bands that we really looked up to, people that were playing for what we thought was huge, like 50 people a night. We're like, oh my God. I don't even know, I can't handle that pressure of 50, you know? And so we were like, this is great. Like, when we met all these people that we looked up to, and as bands do, they break up. So we broke up, and I was like, well, I got to do something. And I'm like 23, and so I was an adult now, and I didn't want to be a roofer, you know? So I'm like stuck in this moment. And so, you know, I decide I still want to play music somehow. There's actually a band from San Diego. We had toured to San Diego and met a band from here called As I Lay Dying. They're like a metal band that was big, I don't know how many years ago, 10 years ago, something like that. And then so they said, hey, we would love for you to come on tour with us in the summer. We know your band broke up, and we would love for you to come sell merch for us. And I was like, merch? That sounds great. I'm the guy that's like passing out hoodies. Like, you need a large? Hold on. You know, that'll be $25, please, thank you. I was like, that sounds great. I mean, what kind of life is that? That sounded great to me. And so it just got me out of that small town, you know. And so maybe 2 weeks before they were going to come pick me up, they said, hey, actually, would you want to fill in for us for the summer playing bass? And I was like, you know, your butt gets kind of tight, like, ooh. The nerves start happening in your stomach, and you're like, it's going to come out one end. I don't know which one. So I got super nervous, and I thought, you know what? Like, I'm going to take this chance, and I'm going to say yes. So 2 weeks, I like learned these songs, which was crazy. And so they drove through Texas, picked me up. I had a backpack, is all the stuff I had. I had a little backpack full of socks and underwear. If you don't know me, I do wear 2 pair of socks, and that's a story for another time. I do have 2 pair of socks on right now, in case you were wondering. The top layer is actually pictures of my children, if you can like kind of, oh my gosh. So a backpack full of socks, and I get into this band with them, and I just never went back. I started to play these shows on tour with them, and at the end of it, they were like, hey, I think you should just join our band. And I just never went back to Texas. I kept my backpack of socks, and I thought I need to add to this because I live somewhere different now, and I need new things. So I moved out here, and I started to play with this band and play shows, and we released a record, and it got a lot of like publicity, and we got like a lot of attention from it, and people started to ask us to go on tour that we looked up to. We were like, oh my gosh, like there were these bands that we were out of our reach that we had seen on TV kind of thing, and we were like, they want to take us on tour. Yes, I'll go. Thank you for asking. So we would go on these tours, and we got to know a lot of people, which was really fun. We did Ozfest, which was really, really cool, like to see all these people, like Black Sabbath, which is a historical band. We like watched them every night, Iron Maiden. We got to watch them every night and things like that. I got to meet Will Smith. I know it. Yeah. His wife was on Ozfest, Jada. We're on a first name basis. And he would come out to and watch her play, and I'd be like, Will, what's up? We did want to go, but yeah. He was filming The Pursuit of Happiness at the time, so he had this like really like gray like little afro thing. I didn't know that, someone told us he was a homeless guy. It's the movie he was shooting, which is true for like 20 seconds of the movie, but so it was like really cool. We had all these things. We hosted some shows on MTV, and I thought like, man, like I had a band that I loved that broke up, and then I get this amazing opportunity to do this. I'm like, the old man, it's nothing. Who were they? You know what I mean? And I started going on this thing, and I started to like trudge forward, and I loved what I did, and I thought, man, this is even better than I thought it could be. All my dreams had come true and then some. And I remember this one time, and I had talked about this a year ago. It's so like prevalent in my life. Capitol Records invited us to come down to Capitol Records in Los Angeles, and we talked to this guy and this like douchey like music guy, and I just don't know what I can say from stage. This douchey music guy, it's not on film, and he took us up to the roof, and he kind of said this thing where like all this is Los Angeles. You're here. He wanted us to enjoy the moment. He's like, you're here at Capitol Records. I personally signed Coldplay. Do you know who Coldplay is? We're like, oh my, get out of here. Yes. Lights will. I was like singing the song. And and we're like, yes, we know who Coldplay is. And he's like, I signed them. I found them, and I'm here with you. And I found you guys. And I was like, he found us. And we're here. And we're literally top of the world. How could we say no to this? And so, we experienced all these things. It was almost like life handed us everything that we needed. I made more money than my parents made for the first time in my entire life playing music. And I thought that was such a cool thing. I don't know if that sounds really weird, but I thought it was cool that I was doing something with my life. And a lot of people said, like, you're not going to stay here and work at Lowe's Home Improvement like your dad or be a roofer? No, I'm actually going to take this opportunity and play music. And I felt like I'd like dusted like, my feet off of this old town. And I had gained all this pride that I didn't know that I had gained. And slowly but surely, all this like religion and this relationship and these things that I had learned over this time in the Bible Belt, I totally like put to the side. And I couldn't tell you if I thought about God the entire time. I couldn't tell you. I'm thinking back right in this moment, like I don't remember a time where I was like praying or like thinking or talking to people about who God is or was to me. And it got to a point where some things happened, and I just felt weird about playing music with them, and I was getting older, and I didn't want to be that old guy on stage, just like balding, but he's got like long hair still, and he's like, oh, my back hurts after like a show. You take my, you had these like meds like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and you like take the ones, or whatever. I got to get a cortisone shot. So I didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to be that guy, and I'd seen those guys, and I was like, I do not want to be this. And so I thought, I got to do something else. And what am I going to do after I play music? And it was such a big piece of what I did. And my identity is like, I need to find a new identity. I need to do something cool and something fun and not roofing. And so I had a few friends say, I think you should be a hairdresser. And I was like, what the heck does that mean? Like I should quit my day job? It's like, you're good, but I think you should do something else. So I thought about, I thought about my hairdresser. Her name was Cynthia. And and she was cool to me. She drove a cool car. So my knowledge now is that I thought she made a lot of money because she drove a cool car, but that's not how that works. But in my ignorance, I thought she drove a cool car, so she made money. And I was like, you know what? Maybe that is a good outlet for me to do. And it's creative. When I see her working, I thought her job was to stand behind people and kind of talk about their day, and then on to the next, thank you. And she kind of flirted with me, which was cool too, you know what I mean? I was like, this is kind of a cool environment, you know what I mean? Like, maybe I could be this person. And so I took a chance and I became a hairdresser. I went to hair school. I quit the band. My last show I played was in Japan. It was our last show we ever played, and it was for like 10,000 people. It was like this peak of anything that I ever thought I could have done, and I played the best I'd ever played on that stage. I sang the best I ever sang. I was entertaining, and then I left. I walked off the stage, and I haven't played music since. Yeah, I walked off, and I was thinking, like, this is either a tragedy or the best thing that could have ever happened. I mean, I didn't know which one it was yet, so I was kind of nervous. And as I walked off that stage and I left it behind, I felt pretty good. And I don't know what that was at the moment. I just felt good that I was like leaving something and doing something else. I go to hair school, and I'm surrounded by like 25 girls in a class, and I'd never really had friends that are girls, never really worked out. I thought they were cool enough to hang out with, they were cool enough to hold their hand. And that's not a prescription. That was a description of what my life was like. And so, I don't know. So it was like a new world to be around all of this female-dominated industry. I fell in love with cutting hair, and I've been doing it now for 16 years. And I absolutely love it. My wife and I are salon owners, and I'm an educator, and I travel and teach people how to cut hair. It's like a weird job. I feel like, what do? I teach people how to make hair shorter and do a good job at that. And that's what I do for a living. And so through that, I met my wife. My wife is Lauren. Her and I are the venue pastors. Oh, yeah, let's holler for Lauren. I met her through doing hair. We were at a hair show. I'd slid into her DMs a little bit before that, and it's like, hi, I don't know how to do this, but my name's Clinton, and I saw you one time, and this is weird, like how do I backtrack? And so we're both at this hair show in Las Vegas, and I was like prepping models. She did makeup at the time, so she's in the makeup room. And I'm like prepping these models here, and I see her walk into the room, and I was like, oh shoot, she is here. And then some boldness came over me, thank God, but some boldness came over me, and I like kind of grabbed her hand, and I was like, hey, do you want to go get coffee later? She's like, yes. And I said, okay. And so we kind of exchanged some sort of number or something, and then we went and got coffee, and I held her hand. Right? Because that's a pure mark of me liking somebody is holding their hand. And it was this way. Like there's two different ways to hold hands. I don't know if you guys know this. This is a Jordan, so you guys are adults. There's this way of holding hands. If you really like somebody, you hold it this way. Right? So I held it this way, so I really liked her. And so we got coffee. She talked about she lived in Little Rock, Arkansas at the time, and she wanted to live in California where there's some more opportunities for hairdressers. And I was like, I know the perfect place for you to work. It's where I work. And I can talk to them and get you hired. So I got her hired, kind of full disclosure, like, yeah, this girl, she's really good at makeup, and I think we should hire her. We're short-staffed, and we need this girl to work here. So I got her hired, and she came out to California, and we started this relationship. Months later, I proposed to her at Disneyland in front of the castle, got on my knee, asked her to marry me. She said yes. And and so we got married. Got pregnant on our honeymoon. We have 2 kids that are on my socks. And we have a son named Merrick. He's 4.5. And then we have a daughter named Indy, and she just turned 3. So it's crazy. We're in the thick of it. We're in the thick of it. We're like, it's crazy right now. And I love like having kids, and I never knew if I would. I mean, I knew I wanted to be a dad, but like it's totally different than I ever thought it was. And so we're so glad to serve at the Jordan and be a part of what this is. Christopher asked us to be a part of the Jordan when he kind of came over, and we were honored to do it. And he's like, I just want you guys to be involved in some capacity. And when we opened the living room to have like a different worship service or a different type of worship service and a different type of intimacy with worship, he asked us to be the venue pastors. And so we didn't know what that meant, but we were like, yep. Can you tell us what that means after I said yes? And so we kind of host that venue, and we love it, and we're just so glad to be a part of what the Jordan is doing. And these last few series have meant something to me. I don't know if it has to you guys that have been sitting in the seats over the past 2 series. I didn't go to Bible college. That wasn't part of my story, as you guys heard. I didn't go to Bible college, so when I'm sitting with either Christopher or Paige or Austin, there's a little different type of something there. I don't know what it is, you know what I mean? It's like, now, can you tell me more about that, please? I was asking these questions, and I talked to Austin one day, and I was like, dude, like, should I have gone to Bible college? Because I feel like I love ministry, and it's something that I feel like just people that go to Bible college, it's like, oh yeah, Romans 1:20. I'm like, oh shoot, like hold on, like where's my Bible or my phone? I'm trying to like figure out where they're reading from, and like, so with those kind of things, I felt like maybe I should have gone to some sort of Bible college. But over time, what I've realized is I feel like I am you guys. I sit in these seats just like you guys do, and I'm listening to teaching, and I'm growing, and I take it back into my home, and I sit at my kitchen table, and I start thinking about the things that we've gone over. And then I ask God to work and to change and make me understand these things, and because I trust him. And I want to talk about some of the things that I've learned through this process. One, we went through the wilderness, right? We guys feel for the wilderness. We went through the wilderness and the wandering and then the waiting. and not to ask God to remove us maybe from the wilderness, but not to waste it. And how can that wilderness form and mold us into knowing more about who God is himself? And then we moved into the Promised Land series. And so when we started going into these things, I'm at home and I'm talking to Lauren and I'm like, okay, tell me, okay, we're about to go into the Promised Land. Like, what is okay, hold on. Let me get some facts about the Promised Land real quick, just so we know what we're going through. And because I didn't go to Bible college, Austin put it very simply. He's like, going to Bible college is like giving you a map. It just kind of lets you see where everything is and how that whole narrative fits. And I was like, that's genius. And so I'm actually going through the map right now. So I'm able to sit at my table and pray and ask God to work. And through this Promised Land series, what I'm thinking about as I go to the Jordan and as I go home, I'm starting to think like, God, what do you want from this Promised Land series for me? How does this Promised Land back then have anything to do with me as a hairdresser, owning a business, being a haircutting teacher, going to the Jordan, surfing, working out, whatever I do with my life? How does that fit into 2021? You know, how does that work? And a few things that I loved about what Austin talked about. He talked about going into the Promised Land and the first orders of obedience and how they had to remember what had happened in the wilderness to actually believe what God would do in the Promised Land. And then Paige put it really awesome last week when she started talking about obedience. And obedience is something that I have learned and I am wrestling with, and as we all do, it's a very difficult thing. And she put it this way. She goes, why does God want us to be obedient? And she asked us that question before we came in as the leadership team, and I was like, Jeez, is anybody going to answer? Because I do not know the answer. And she answered it perfectly, and I think it took obedience to a different level with me. She said, because he loves us, he wants good things for us, and because we are his ambassadors. And that opened up obedience a little bit for me to think about, okay, well, why am I being obedient? Like, is it to make me a better Clinton? You can be a better version of you today. You know what I mean? I didn't buy into that self-help stuff, so that was weird for me. So it opened it up really great to me. So as I've been reading, one book that I've never read is the book of Joshua. Have you guys read the book of Joshua? Nice. Oh my God. You want to trade spots? Oh no. Okay. I was giving you the okay. You were like, oh shoot, this is happening. Clinton runs the Jordan really weird. But I've been reading through Joshua, and Joshua has had such an impact in my life, and there's been these little things that as I go home and I start digging into, that I start realizing there's been pitfalls in the Promised Land. And that's what I want to talk about. There's two pitfalls that I've fallen into when I get into the Promised Land, because at some point they forgot the God of their forefathers. And at some point they started worshiping other things. And so what are those pitfalls that get us into some, what does Larry say, deep weeds? If you guys go to North Coast, there's a pastor here called Larry Osborne. I don't know if you guys actually go. But yes, and so there's some things that can keep us from getting into those deep weeds. And some of those pitfalls, if we know them and we look out for them, we have the ability to head them off at the pass. One of them is making it all about us. All right? Making it all about us is a very easy thing to do. And even Austin talked about in a self-help culture, it's do what feels good. If it feels good, it's right. Like, do you feel good about it? Oh, you feel good about it? Then do it. I teach this thing and I tell people not to follow their heart. And it's the most like crazy. People are gasping. And like, I don't know if I can trust him because I follow my heart. And I'm like, don't. I mean, so I teach this thing. And so making it all about ourselves is a very, very dangerous thing. And as I'm reading through Joshua and I'm looking at this thing, this book about his leadership, we tend to, and what I've started to not do is write myself into the story a specific way. Like I tend to read these Bible verses and make it about myself, like, what's the popular, David and Goliath. I'm David, and what are my Goliaths that I need to slay? You know, like that's what I'm trying to think of, like I can slay my own Goliath. And how contradictory is that to the gospel? But I write myself into there. You know, Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Is that the right Bible verse? Okay, someone look that up. So Philippians 4:13, you know, the Bethany Hamilton movie, Soul Surfer? Oh my, I watched that on the airplane not too long ago and I cried my eyes out. I have my headphones and I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm fine. You know, I was, every 5 minutes, it was just something dramatic. And great story, great movie, watch it. But it talked about, you know, they're like, Philip, what happened to me doing all things? And that's what it was about. It was about like surfing. Like God, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can dunk a basketball. I can do all things through, I can't dunk a basketball, but I can, if I'm following this narrative, I can do all things. Dunk a basketball, I can do it. Christ can give me strength to do it. And so that feels weird to me. And as I read through Joshua, he does this at a point which took me a second to catch. So if you guys have your Bibles or you have a device, I want you guys to open up to Joshua. It's page 150 in my Bible. I don't know if you guys, just to help you out there. So if we're going to go to Joshua, we're going to look at a little bit of what Joshua has to say in this kind of funny little quick story. We're going to go to Joshua 5, and we're going to go to 13 through 15. So I'll give you guys a second to go there. As it goes through Joshua, Joshua has kind of taken over. Moses has passed away. They go through these things. He starts, instituting a few things that Moses had before, like to obey the Torah, which is one of the first things they do, like a Passover meal. They do all these kind of things. And then they're kind of ready to kind of move forward. They've already looked back at what's going on. They're ready to move forward. And everybody kind of like decides whether they're going to be for God and do this thing with Joshua. So Joshua chapter 5, verse 13. It's this kind of funny story. So when Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing before him with his sword drawn and in his hand. So what do? Joshua went up to him, which that's the last thing that I'm doing. I'm seeing a dude with a sword in his hand drawn. I'm like, oh, crap. Like, I don't know if I should boldly walk up to this guy. So what he did is he walked up to this guy and he said, are you for us or are you for our adversaries? And he has this funny answer. He says, no. So this happens a lot of time in my household. Lauren says, it's Sunday, it's after church. Do you want to go to IKEA or Michael's? And I say, no. Because I do not want to do either of those things. Neither of those are the things that I choose to do. Or it's like me, like, do you want to eat at Chipotle or do you want to eat at Chick-fil-A? And she goes, no. Right? So that's typically what happens. It's a funny answer, but I think it resonates because neither of them are true. He said, no, I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come. Looking later, we know that this is actually Jesus incarnate. Now I have come. Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshiped him, saying, what does my Lord say to his servant? And the commander of the Lord said to Joshua, take off your sandals. This is from history. Take off your sandals, your feet. It's a place where you're standing is holy, and Joshua did so. So what's funny about that story is the question that Joshua asked is so telling of Joshua's heart. He made it all about him. The question he asked, he had nothing to say about God in that moment. Are you for me? Are you for our enemies? Because I need to know where you stand and how you can benefit me. Are you going to be against me? He said nothing to do with who God was. Like, are you for God? Because that's what I am. I am for God. Are you for God? It's like, are you for me? Or are you for them? And in so many times I'm doing that. I'm looking through these things, painting myself into a story. And can God make me David to slay my Goliath in the story? And that's one of those pitfalls, is making it all about us. What we have to understand first and foremost is the Bible is a book about God. Sometimes I play a role in that. I play a role in his story as typically either a spectator or a supporter in God's will. Rarely am I David. God is a true David. God is a truer and better Moses. And so this story in Joshua, being able to look into it with the insights that I've gotten from sitting here, have been amazing for me to look at Joshua that way. The next pitfall, this is my pet pitfall. This is the one that I do the most. And it's when I look at abundance and I take it for granted. If I just told you a story about my life. I've had a pretty good life. If you think about it, I could tell you some, I could tell you some bad things. I don't know if I want to get into that. I could tell you some bad things that have happened, but even in those bad things, I've had a great attitude. I've had a great attitude in those bad things that have happened. I grew up with a loving family. I've had a ton of abundance my entire life. When they talk about going into the promised land, one of the things that has stuck in my mind is the milk and honey. We all have heard that, it's a land of milk and honey, which is really just a symbol of abundance. God is taking care of all of our needs, but in that abundance, he's taking care of the things that we don't actually need. Milk and honey are things that are overflow. So he's provided for us and then some. But I love the and then some. If a little bit's good, a lot's really good. It's like shampoo and conditioner in the shower. I'm a hairstylist, so those are my analogies, right? So I typically use a lot of conditioner, and Lauren's like, oh my gosh, that's expensive. So I typically, in abundance, I typically take those for granted, and that's one of my pitfalls. And that's what we see through all throughout the story of being in the promised land, is they took it for granted. All these things that God has just pulled them through out of this slavery into the wilderness and then into the promised land as his holy nation. If you were here on Sunday, if you do go to our church, Chris Brown talked about how to win actually with the losing hand was a part of his sermon. And he talked about like winning in all these bad scenarios. And I love Chris Brown, actually. I'm about to say this. But I was like, I don't feel like I have a bad hand. You know, and I feel like what I do, in that moment, I wrote this down Sunday, as I was like, I feel like I'm losing with a winning hand. I have everything giving to me. I have all the aces lined up, and somehow I screw it up. Or I neglect God, and I put him on the back burner. And then the world has this easy way of feeding into my milk and honey and what I want and what my extra things that I need. And I feel like I fill myself up with pride when those things happen. And I just feel like I don't think about the things that I spiritually need, because all of my other needs are met and then some. Now, those things are good things, and what we do for a lot of our Christian walk is we take the good things and we make them into ultimate things. We take these really good things in our life. We take all of these things, like say my wife, for instance, or my kids, or my career. We make those good things ultimate things. This is my identity, and we call those things idols. Anything that gives us security and a sense of being and who we are, those are the things that are our idols. And those are the things that we take, we put them in a place that we worship. And if you were to look at my bank account, if you were to look at my calendar, and you were to look at all those things and find out where my priorities were, I'd be nervous if there was a court case and that was the proof. And you had to bring me up there and be like, I mean, you go to church twice a week, but you do all these other, you know what I mean? So I think that's a scary thing to do, and that's one of my pitfalls, is I make these good things into ultimate things. I want us to read one more passage. We're going to go to the New Testament now. I like reading the Old Testament and the New Testament in tandem together. We're actually going to go to Romans. Romans, written by the Apostle Paul. And we're going to go to that first chapter. So it's towards the back of your Bible. You got about this much left. You're there. All right. Again, my page is 939, if you guys have the same Bible. And we are going to go to Romans 1, and I think we're going to start in 18. I originally wrote 21, but I want to back up just a little bit in Romans. I've loved Romans since I was a kid. I always heard that if the whole Bible were to burn up except for Romans, you'd be okay. You know, if it's the only book that you stumbled upon, you know what I mean, and that was the one, that you could be okay with it. But if you have a device, go there, open up your Bibles to Romans 1, and we're going to go to actually chapter 1, verse 18. And we're going to cruise through a little bit. So I'm going to read this out loud for us. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in these things that have been made. So they are without excuse. And here we are. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their understanding and foolish, and their hearts were darkened. And that's what I'm talking about right now. What we do is we wind up, even though we know who God is, we don't honor him for who he is and give thanks for who he is. And in that promised land, that's where those things go wrong. 22, claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man, birds and animals and creeping things, which is what we do every day. How often do I take the place of who God is in my life and put a human there? You know how people say, like, she is my everything. He is my everything. My children, they're my world. Right? And those are small little things that creep in. And we start telling ourselves that lie, that they are my everything, and if they were gone, who would I be? And that's us, again, telling a lie to ourselves. 24, therefore God gave them up to their lust of their hearts, to impurities, to the dishonoring of their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and they worshiped the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. My son My son loves Batman. I love Batman. The Chris Nolan Batmans are like, I mean, we could watch those every night. I could never get tired of it. My wife would. But I could say, let's watch The Dark Knight. It's great. That's great. Let's just dissect it, okay? It's not the hero that they wanted, but the hero they needed, okay? So I absolutely love The Dark Knight. I love Batman and that whole series. And even as a kid, I loved it. And so my son loves Batman. Like every Batman, Lego Batman, super fun if you haven't seen it. Lego Batman, he ties this little like blanket around his neck. He wears underwear all the time. It's not like Batman, but he just wears his underwear. He gets home, takes his shirt off and his pants off. He's like, I'm ready to play. The one rule in our house is you keep your underwear on, and that's all you did, is you kept your underwear. So he you need Batman, and that's what he loves it, and absolutely everything like has to do. It's kind of getting over to Spider-Man right now, but he loves Batman. And so what we do as loving parents, what we do is we buy him Batman characters. And secretly as a dad, I'm like, this is freaking awesome. Like, let's put this thing together, bro. And my son does the funniest thing. I actually have one right now. I'm going to give it to him when I go home. So this is what he loves, right? Looks cool, right? I know. So he loves these things. Every time we go into Target, he goes, Batman's at Target? We're like, Batman is at Target. There's a bunch of different Batmans at Target, actually. And so he loves these little Batman things, like Tactical Batman is his favorite, and he loves Tactical Batman. So we love him to love Tactical Batman. And so when we get him these things, the funniest thing happens. This is what he does. So he opens this Batman, right? Oh my gosh, I don't think I should have done this on stage. You're kind of nervous, and you can't open like a bottle of water. You're like, I'm working on it. Just give me a second here. So he opens this. So what he does, he opens this. He takes out the Batman, right? And he's like, whoa, this is so cool. It's Tactical Batman. And we're like, yeah, it's Tactical Batman. Mom, get the scissors, right? And he's like, whoa, this is so cool. And then he takes out this paper that's in the Batman thing. Batman's right there. He takes this thing out and he's like, whoa, look at Batman. And this is what it is. Look, I don't know if you guys see it. It's literally pictures of other Batmans that you could get. And a little bit of information about the Batman that you just got. So he's like, whoa, look at Batman. Daddy, look, it's Tactical Batman. I'm like, yeah, buddy, this is Tactical Batman. You're totally right. This is Tactical Batman. But dude, I'm like, the real thing is on the floor, and he's like, yeah, Tactical Batman. And he's like, what's his name? And we're going through this stuff, and this is what he plays with. This two-dimensional, flat, photoshopped thing of Batman. The three-dimensional real thing is on the floor, but this is what he chooses, and we're like, all right, and so we're like, that's weird, dude, you know what I mean? Can I have the box? And we're like, sure. Here's the box, dude. And it's the weirdest thing, and we're like looking at each other going, who did we raise? And where did he get this from? And so this is what he does. So he comes, he'll sit on the couch with us, and he's like this. And then he'll take it, and then we're like, okay, let's go. It's time to go to bed. We've gotten over Batman. We're eating food and stuff. It's time to go to bed. Come on, buddy. We get them all ready, pee-pee on the potty, and get all this stuff going. And all of a sudden, he's like, paper? And I want my paper. Can I get my paper? I'm like, you want your freaking paper? And he goes and gets his paper, and he's like looking at it, like laying in bed. And he's like, hey, that's Batman, Tactical Batman. Daddy, Mommy, Tactical Batman. And I'm like, do you want, anyway. So he folds this up and lays there with it. We wake up in the morning, it's like sweaty. You sweat when you're sleeping? Right? And we're like, dude. And then he carries his paper around. We have papers. Lauren told me to bring it, but I'm like, you can have a word picture. It has little edges, like when you folded a paper so many times over and sweat on it in your sleep, that it gets soft. It gets like a soft piece of paper now. And this is what he's traded in. And this is me. My son is his father, and not a Batman sense. But so Batman is God. That's what you're going to take from tonight. Batman is God. And these are the things that I've traded in for this flat, two-dimensional, worthless piece of paper. Worthless piece of paper that I decide, oh, shoot, you know what I mean? I've given myself over to spending my time with these flat, two-dimensional, I can't even play with this thing. And that's what I've done, and that's what we've done. And that's one of the pitfalls of the promised land, is that I have everything here for me, but I'm looking, I discard the truth. I trade in the truth for this broken image of who God is. If I turn into my relationship, my relationship is a broken image of Christ in the church, this relationship that I get to experience who God is in this. And I trade it in, and sometimes I do it as church. Sometimes I make church that thing instead of who I'm there worshiping, and I've exchanged the truth for a lie. And so I urge you, as you go into the rest of this sermon series, that you dive in and you allow God to be where he deserves to be as the king and the throne of your heart, instead of putting these created things in that place. And that's what I urge you guys to do as we continue through Joshua. Even though you and I have not been to Bible college, we still have the ability to seek out, search God, understand, and have this relationship with him. Just because I don't get paid to be here, just because we don't get paid to do the things and research and look at things, does not mean that we can't have this close, intimate relationship with our Creator. Pray with me. Father, thank you so much for the work that you've done in our lives, in our hearts, and in this series. I pray for these pitfalls that we can find ourselves into, even though your grace and your mercy, who you are, and us that you created, and the glory that you have here, and that you've shown yourself to us. But what we've done is we've traded those things in. Lord, I pray that you forgive us. I pray that there's a work that's done in our heart to rearrange the good things. Understand that they are created things meant to show your glory. And I pray that when we're in the promised land, we give you the gratitude and the understanding of who you are and what you've done for us on the cross and with your Holy Spirit. Lord, we love you. In your name we pray. Amen.